All right, so episode 2 of the podcast. Last time we didn't have a name. We were dancing around it a little bit. Finally landed on something I thought was clever. The podcasting couch. If you get it, you get it. If you don't worry about it. Anyway, tonight my guest is a very good friend of mine. We've known each other 10 years? Not
Yeah,
quite.
close.
Few. Anyway, sir, introduce yourself. Who are you?
Sure. My name is Drew, and I have been interested in culture, I would say, since I got out of high school. I actually didn't have much exposure to culture before then. And I personally didn't become politically active, I would say, until, I was 20. Is when I first started looking at politics and wondering what's going on in the world. Why are these things happening? Of course, back then, 20 years old, you have a very different outlook. At that point, it was like George W. and the war in Iraq and Afghanistan.
I see
But,
you're trying to take this in a political slant.
I figured it's going in that direction.
I don't know. I'm just rolling with this.
Sure. But personally, I've always been a big fan of, say, the nerd culture, fantasy books and movies, some video games. I like to read. I'm an aspiring writer. Perhaps at one point I'll also have a YouTube channel and a podcast. Who knows?
And I encourage you to keep that writing going. I've offered to be a alpha, beta reader, whatever.
You'll be
you
one of
need
the first.
From me.
You'll be one of the first.
I would like to be involved. Let everybody know where they can get a pair of those suspenders.
Online, Amazon is going to be where I picked up mine. I can't say for sure that you'll be able to pick up yours on Amazon because I picked these up a long time ago, before the pandemic upset all the usual ways of things.
Well, it takes a man who doesn't fuck around to rock out suspenders like you do, sir.
Apparently at work, I am known as the guy with suspenders and a beard. There's 4,000 to 5,000 people in the building, and I'm the only one with a beard and suspenders.
Well, sir, part of the reason I consider you a friend is because you're a human cartoon character.
Well, great.
And you're actually not a fan of the real live action cartoon characters, as it turns out, because you told me you had to walk away from that. How loud is that dog lapping up that water? I can't even concentrate on all I can hear is.
Hey! It's been a thirsty night in many aspects so far.
It's a thirsty night for me every night, but I'm not sponsored, so I won't say what I'm drinking
Sure.
here. Natural Light. But you told me you had to walk away from the Pirates series as a whole because of a certain scene in, I believe it was Pirates 4.
It was Pirates 4. See, Pirates of the Caribbean, I really love Pirates of the Caribbean, the original movies. Black Pearl, Dead Man's Chest, At World's End. I enjoyed all three of them. Of course, the second and the third one were not as widely embraced by...
You had to love some Davy Jones, though.
Oh, yeah. Do you fear death?
Oh, one of the greatest lines of all time. Bill Nighy is the actor.
Yeah. I've
Very
got a job to
underrated.
it. I've got a job to it. That kind of stuff was... There's a cartoonish aspect to Captain Jack Sparrow in the first 3 movies.
100%.
I mean, there's only so many anvils that are going to be constantly suspended from ropes to where you can just shoot a rope and then fly through the air.
Right.
And you're not going to have a lot of those on a ship, but always on a ship there's a rope, you can kick something and you're flying through the air. That's fine.
Well, who was the guy back in the Elden days, the black and white, the pirate that was a little before my generation? I'm drawing a blank. What was the famous pirate?
Dread Pirate Roberts?
No. Before even that, I'm drawing a blank. Can you look up famous pirate movies early 1900s? Continue your story. We'll look this.
I was a fan of the Pirates series until it got to the fourth Pirates movie. I can't even recall the title of the movie at this point because it when you have
Stranger Tide.
When you have Jack Sparrow and he is beset by a half dozen redcoats with rifles and bayonets. He is there by himself and he has a rope. And so he runs at this half dozen redcoats. They run at him. Things aren't looking good for old Jack. But due to movie magic, you see him juke one way and then juke the X way. And somehow, Jack Sparrow has wrapped this rope around all of the redcoats, and he's pulled them up against a tree. And he puts his foot against the tree, and he tugs real hard, and they are thrust against the tree so hard they knock themselves out. That's a little far-fetched.
It's a cartoon.
That's extremely cartoony. That's
Right.
we're
So you
wandering
think they
into
went too far.
We're wandering into Scooby-Doo material
It was like
here.
the 30s or 40s, Caitlin. It was old.
Because at this point, it's almost immediately followed by Jack Sparrow climbing a coconut tree, and he lassos another coconut tree.
Errol Flynn.
And he begins pulling the other coconut tree towards him. His coconut tree remains vertical, while the other coconut tree leans over towards his coconut tree. And then he jumps off of his tree and is thrown across there. It became too Scooby-Doo for me.
So the guy getting turned into a squid and having his heart kept didn't bother you. It was,
it was the Scooby-Doo aspect of it, yeah.
That's fair.
Because
there are levels of canon.
well, it's a level of maintaining a certain standard or a certain norms.
Suspension of disbelief getting harder and harder for you to.
Well, but that's the thing about sci-fi, science fiction, is that science fiction is built upon
Laws.
a world,
Its own set of laws.
exactly, a world that has laws very similar to ours, except for one thing, or a few things. In Star Wars, it's a world exactly like ours, except they have the Force.
Right.
Some people have the Force.
Right.
Other people don't. I mean, it's not an equitable world. Not everyone has the Force. Oh, but nowadays they might. That's a different discussion.
Let's not get started.
I know that's a sore topic for you, sir. So we won't
It
go
is.
into that.
That's actually not anymore. I've gone through my mourning phase.
Well, I'm glad for you, sir, because I know that it did lure you into a dark spot for a bit.
Well, it's one of those things you grow up with that is just. So Star Wars came out before I was born.
Yes.
So I don't have a memory where Star Wars wasn't in it. It was
Sure.
introduced to me at such a young age that I don't remember not having it in my life. Same with Indiana Jones.
The very first time I watched Star Wars, it was after they had first edited it. That was my first exposure.
Oh,
to Star
really?
Wars.
So you had not
I'd never seen the original untouched.
Wait, they didn't edit it until like 2000.
Exactly. I didn't see it until I was like 12.
No way.
Way?
Wait, I thought you're 84, right?
85.
85. Okay. Well, no, you would have been like 15.
Yeah. I was in my teens
So you didn't
before
grow
I saw.
up with it.
No. I didn't have any
You didn't have
Star
access.
Wars. I had Star Trek through syndicated TV shows intermittently, but I didn't have Star Wars growing up.
Wow.
No, I was of the go outside and play generation and then go to your room and play generation. It wasn't a whole lot of TV.
We had a good balance because my mother was very, technology was very new and she was very concerned about it. So I had a very limited amount of time on it, which, I agree with.
Sure.
In hindsight, certainly. You always have a lot of disagreements with your parents over certain things. That's one of the things that I say, good job, Mom. I'm glad you did that because I do that as well. And now we're 20, 30, we're almost 40 years removed from video games being introduced to pop culture.
Yeah.
And I see kids all the time that are just glued to tablets. They can't function without it.
Well, I applaud your mother for having an interest like that for you because as I got older, there was absolutely zero moderation from adults as to what you could or couldn't watch. You familiar with the movie Old School?
Will Ferrell, right?
Will Ferrell.
Yeah,
yes.
hell yeah.
Will Ferrell.
Late 90s, early 2000s?
Yeah, early 2000s, mid 2000s.
I haven't seen it a long time.
Well, you don't have to. It's very. I mean,
It's old school.
It's old school. There's not much to that movie. It doesn't contribute much to the growth of humanity or the development.
Wasn't that the guys that were in college trying to live?
They were
glory
grown
days?
adults, and they joined a fraternity so they could relive.
That's right.
They created a fraternity, right? And they were the leaders of the fraternity, right?
Okay.
So we saw that, and I saw that in high school, and my brother, 10 years younger than me, saw it at the same time. So,
Wow.
so there was a night where, of course, we're here local. there's Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue. Local festival goes on, right? So there's a night when Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue stuff's going on, and I'm at my father's house, and my sister and brother, they want to put on a movie, and I'm reading because I'm usually reading. I don't care what they're doing. And they're like, let's watch this. I'm like, okay, well, fine. Well, my father had guests over, and they had brought their kids over. Now, my father and his friends, they're drinking. They're doing adult things outside. They got a bonfire. They're having a hell of a time.
Any dolphins involved?
No dolphins. This is a very landlocked region, unless you're talking about the White River Monster. I don't think that's what the White River Monster is. Pray it isn't. So, but no. So my brother and sister were like, hey, let's watch Old School. It's super fun. The opening scene of Old School is one of the main characters is coming home, and he's coming home to surprise his wife, and he finds she's having an affair with one of his friends, and they have explicit porn playing, and it's showing on the screen. Now, me, I've seen the movie before. I don't care what they're doing. I'm reading a book. Mm-hmm. My sister and my brother are watching this because they think it's hilarious. This other couple's kids are like, what the fuck is going on? I don't realize because I'm not paying attention to anyone else. Apparently, one of my father's friends, adults, one of the parents of these other kids come in, and they're like, what the fuck's going on? And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's probably not appropriate. After the case.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, there's levels of parenting, and I think the most important thing is engagement. And not a lot of parents want to parent anymore. They want to do their own thing. And, at some point you would think when you have kids, the level of selfishness that pervades breaks a little bit. And you say, I'm no longer the top priority. But apparently that's not the case with a lot of parents.
Well,
they continue to be the most important thing in their lives. And then the kids are somewhere down the line. But
well, society tells everyone you can have everything you want. You can do your schooling, then you can get married, then you can have a family, and you can have a home, and you can have everything you want, and you can have it when you want it. You can schedule it and expect it to happen, but the reality is it doesn't happen that way. When you have kids, parents should be sacrificing their and reprioritizing their kids over
the key
themselves.
word is should be. They don't. Parents are lazy.
Some do.
And
Some
honestly,
do,
there's a lot of people right now that blame the government and blame, whoever you want to blame. The Jews, what? That's a hot topic right now.
I don't drink much juice. Go
on. But everybody wants to blame somebody else. When in reality, what I'm seeing with my own eyes and with fucked up kids that I know, it's the parents. These kids get up in the morning. They're on their damn video games. They can't get in the car without playing video games for a 10-minute drive. They're in the grocery store on who knows what it is, social media, whatever. But the kids are in front of a tablet. And we know the studies now in that short-term gains produce dopamine. So what happens is these kids get addicted to dopamine as toddlers. That quick release, that quick happiness. And videos have gotten shorter and shorter and shorter. So now it's a 10, 12-second clip, and then it's on to the next engaging thing. Mm-hmm. And they're just swiping through these or playing these mindless video games. It's so funny. Walter played The Legend of Zelda recently.
Yeah.
And on the Switch version, you can hold down the L button and rewind.
Uh-huh.
So if you want to do a invincibility run, every time you get hit, just rewind it and attack it from a different vector. When we were kids, you were a good fucking gamer because if you got to World 8 in Mario on your last continue and you died, you started all the way back over. And so you got so good, you could play those first 6 levels blindfolded almost.
Do you remember the Nintendo 64 game, I want to say it was called Legend? It was a multiplayer game up to 4 players where
doesn't sound familiar.
Each person would have a different class.
Can you pull up a YouTube video of N64 Legend? I want to see what this looks like.
I don't know if it was Legend. It was something else.
Well, then never mind. He can't even give us a title.
I don't want to say it's Legend. It was something else. It was a 4-player game where every person that would plug in would have a different class, and you'd explore the map trying to unlock different areas. The problem was, it was an extremely long game, and we did not have a memory card. We couldn't afford a memory card.
Were those the ones that
they would
plug into the back of the controller?
They would plug into the bottom of the controller,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And so we would play this this
one
game for 6 hours, trying to beat our prior max record of how far we could get before the Nintendo overheated and turned off on its own.
Good times.
That was what we did for fun. That's when we ran out of sticks and rocks to throw up in the air.
I remember the first time I played an N64. Back in the days, they would set up just game stations at Walmart or the mall, and you could just go play it. You know, there were no locks on the cartridges.
Your first hit's free.
Yeah, and I remember playing. So, of course, Super Nintendo came out in 91. I want to say N64.
Gauntlet Legends.
Gauntlet Legends. Can we get a Gauntlet Legends
video?
That
was the game.
I want to see this. But I do remember playing Mario 64 for the first time. It was the first 3D. Now, I know computer had already had some 3D games.
Sure.
Wolfenstein 3D. It's kind of
Doom had.
It was fixed on an axis.
Yeah.
But Mario 3D was really wild.
It was.
It was so just mind blowing. And now to look back on it, you know where we are, and I've talked about this before, where the things that our kids grow up with, you know, the internet's ubiquitous. They don't know a world without the internet.
They don't know a world with answering machines.
You're right, or any of that without cell phones. But it was just so wild seeing a game in 3D, and the camera control sucked even back then.
Yeah.
It was awful. So let's look. I want to see a second of this. Gauntlet Legends. Yeah, let's hit play on this. I want to see what trash this looks like. Is this turn-based?
No.
This is live.
Unlock chests with keys. Save keys to open doors and chests. Collect gold to buy power-ups.
I don't think so. Play for at max 4 to 6 hours.
6 hours of that.
This was the shit back then because ran out of rocks and sticks to throw it.
All right, that's enough of this.
Yes, this is. I recall this. At this point, there's nostalgia.
I've never heard of that one.
I can't say I recall it fondly, but nostalgically, I can recall it.
Did you ever play any Quake or
No.
any of that stuff? So I remember my buddy Danny had a PlayStation, and he'd bring it over because I was a Nintendo guy. You
Sure.
know this about me.
I know this.
I was deeply loyal to Nintendo until
The Witcher.
Elden Ring came out. Witcher was on Switch when I
okay.
first played it.
Okay.
Danny had a PlayStation. He brought it over and Quake because he had Quake, and it was 4-player.
Sure.
And, you know, back then, you know, the TVs in kids' bedrooms were, I don't know, 24 inches.
Yeah.
And so 4 of us would play, and we
On
would
a
all
split screen, and you always call each other out. Hey, don't look at my section. Don't look at
yeah,
my
yeah.
stuff.
Oh, but we would gang up on one dude and be like, "Hey,
yeah.
watch so and so," and everybody would watch where he was, and we'd all, you know, just wait for him to come around the corner and blast him, and he could never figure out what the hell was going on.
That was basically playing GoldenEye on.
Yeah,
Nintendo
GoldenEye was
64.
a fucking classic.
It was the shit.
I don't know if they have the license to that because it's not on their online. I don't know how to play that unless you have the cartridge, and
I don't
those
know.
cartridges are not cheap.
No.
But I still have a working N64. The problem is they weren't in HD.
No.
So, and I don't even think these TVs have RCA's on them. I'm pretty
Nope.
sure this one doesn't.
They don't.
My last one, the one next door that Julie and I got when we got married, has RCA's on it. So I had my Nintendo and Super hooked up on it for a while, but it's just so big.
Well, if anything, you can get an RCA to coax adapter, and you may have a coax input. But even so, it's low def.
Yeah, it's even the new versions, like of the Ninja Turtle games. You can put a filter on it for the
Yes.
lag and the TV. Yeah, it's wild. If you want the true experience.
If you want it, yeah. Or if you want, you can press the right combination of buttons, then rewind it and not have to replay 6 hours.
Exactly. But it made us good.
Because the cost of failure was high.
It was very high.
I mean, because literally you're losing 6 hours worth of your time that you've put into this.
Well, if I get pissed off on a Witcher boss now, I just hit pause, settings, easy. I'm done with this fucker. Let's move on.
There wasn't an easy
I may
mode.
or may not set the difficulty back up, but back in the day there was no easy mode.
There was no easy mode, no.
You didn't even have a save mode other than Zelda. The original Zelda did have a save file that would save the items you got.
Sure.
Which was very ahead of its time. You didn't even have that, again, for a long while. But the Mega Man games had passwords that
Sure.
you could put in that would give you certain items.
The Game Boy, The Lost World. When you played this game, every time you made it to a new level, it would give you a code.
Oh, yeah.
So that you could go back to the beginning of that level. So if your game froze, if something happened, your batteries died, if you had to go eat dinner, you could just turn it off. As long as you had written down that most recent code, you could start at the beginning of that level.
Well, that was the thing. Well, in my day, it was a thing. It's a thing in my kid's day as well. It's like when your time's up, your time's up.
Yeah.
And so back then, you couldn't save.
No.
You know, and now if you're in a quest in certain games, you can't save either. Whereas my wife's like, I don't care if you're in the middle of the quest. It's dinner time. And the kids are like, what do I do? It's like, you know, you
Well,
gotta.
nowadays, a Switch, you can just hit that home button and it'll
You can
freeze
sleep
everything.
it.
You just can
You
sleep
can
it.
sleep it, but the problem is if everybody's playing the same game and somebody reboots that game, then it kills your thing.
Yeah.
So I used to have a lot of fun when we were all playing the same game together, and we've done that on a few. But that was the problem. Is like if somebody couldn't get to a save and somebody else played it, you got screwed. Now we've kind of all gone in our different directions, so we're all playing different stuff now. But you might have been the one that shared this meme with me that I have on the wall above my Star Wars figure. It's an older Cold Sir, but it checks out.
Yes.
Yeah, I believe you sent that to me, and I printed it out because it was so good. It's a favorite meme of mine, probably my favorite. Up, up, down, down, left, right, AB, select, start. The Konami code.
Yes, indeed.
Usable in most Konami games. Contra, Ninja Turtles.
Mm-hmm.
They had a few others. I also... I think there's another. The Mike Tyson's Punch Out. Did you ever play that?
No,
A
honestly.
little before your time.
I did not. I did not have a Nintendo. Periodically, I was able to play a Nintendo for a limited time, but it was Duck Hunt and Mario. I mean, we played a Sega Genesis. We had access to it for a little while, borrowing it from one of my father's friends, who was a little bit, had a little bit more expendable income.
Sure.
So we played some Sonic the Hedgehog and stuff, but honestly, I mentioned to you before, the first time I saw Star Wars was in my teens. It was after George Lucas had remastered it for the first time.
Fucked them up, we'll say.
And it came out on disc, and my dad's like, yeah, you guys haven't seen this before, right? I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. He's like, yeah, this stuff was miles ahead of itself. You know, it was so far advanced. I'm like, okay, well, I'm excited to see it. And then we watched Star Wars. I'm like, what did I watch? Because I was used to Star Trek. And so it's like Star Wars. I'm like, is this like Star Trek? And yeah, it's kind of like Star Trek, but it's not.
Not at all.
And, well...
It's kind of like the Star Trek movies that were trying to be Star Wars.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it took me a long time to develop my true fondness for Star Wars. Because the first time I saw it, all I could think of is, this is not Star Trek. And I couldn't get beyond that. I was socially
Well, that's
awkward.
just so wild to me. I had no idea you hadn't seen it until you were a teenager.
Yes, it was not
I just
a
thought
part
it was
of
something
my...
you grew up with.
No, sir. No, sir. I did not have a... Like I said, I saw Star Trek in Syndicate here and there. Syndication. And it was always Next Gen that I saw. So it wasn't the TOS. So, but yeah. No, I was always a big reader when I could find something to read. But again,
Yeah.
you have only so much to read, and then books cost money, and it was something that expendable income wasn't available for.
Well, and you had a high reading level at a very young age, just like I did, just like Max did. It was tough for me to find books that challenged him, but that were of appropriate content
Yes.
for him to read, because I was reading Stephen King in 4th grade.
Yeah, I
And-
wasn't reading Stephen King quite that young. It was at least 5th or 6th grade before I was reading Stephen King.
Well, the only reason I had access to it was there was a kid in our class that would, I don't know if his parents got rid of them, if he was stealing them or what, but he would come to school,
Yeah.
and he would flip through all the King books and find all the naughty words, the cunts, the fucks, and he
Okay.
would use a highlighter on them. And so it was like doing a drug deal. He knew the readers, he knew the nerds, and he was a nerd himself. He's a
Sure.
very industrious nerd.
An entrepreneur of sorts.
An entrepreneur for sure. And so he'd have this big, it was a Food for Less brown paper bag.
Sure.
Had a bunch of King books in it. And he'd say, hey, Durham, I got something that might interest you. I remember the Cujo was the first one he showed
Yeah.
me. And he flips to it, and there's this highlighted, it's the word cunt. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I'm flipping through, and there's other highlighted words. I was like, I'll take it.
What'd you trade for it?
He was charging like $1 or something. It was nothing. This was, I don't know.
Yeah,
how old
I'd be-
are you in 4th grade? You're like
9 or
10?
10. 9 or 10.
Yeah, so this was like 1990, 91. And I was just the naughty words, because the books I'd been reading, Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, I read Jurassic Park, and, I hadn't really, I was not, by the time I got around to reading classic literature, I was already ruined.
When I was reading, when I was 10 is where my reading interest really took off, because finally I went to a school which had books available that I was interested in. At that point, I was reading like the children's version of Moby Dick and, Jules
Have you ever
Verne.
read Moby Dick in its entirety?
I've tried when I was in high school to read Moby Dick, and
I
every
also
time
tried.
I'd open it, and within 3 pages, I'd fall asleep.
I also quit after about 2 pages. It's like, no thanks.
It's like, call me Ishmael. Okay, I got that.
Even Captain Picard couldn't save Moby Dick.
Oh man.
That movie was trash.
So, but no, when I was in the 6th grade, there was a classmate of mine who had copies of all the Goosebumps books, and I was just starved for something to read. And at that point, Goosebumps books were extremely beneath my reading level. So what I would do is I would go to school, and he'd have a bunch of Goosebumps books, so I'd borrow 2 of them. And then at the end of the school day, when we go to leave to get on the bus, I'd give them back. And he'd loan me 2 more.
Yeah.
And I'd take them home, and I'd read them both. And in the morning, I was constantly exchanging them. And so I'd talk with him about these books. Oh, this is great. What about here? Oh, that was awesome. I did the same thing in the 8th grade with Animorphs books. It wasn't exactly great for my grades at the time, because I was reading books instead of, doing the school stuff. But
Are you a man who struggles with balancing your duties with your entertainment?
I have to have very set rules around my entertainment. I don't put video games on my phone because I anticipate I'll have difficulties limiting myself to when I will play those games.
Sure.
So my phone is entirely a utilitarian thing. It's not meant for games at all.
Did you ever read any of the Young Indiana Jones books?
No.
Because they were out around the time the Goosebumps. Because I was
Yeah.
3rd or 4th grade when
Sure.
those were big, and I remember they were about the same size.
Sure.
150
No.
pages, something like that. I read some of those. They also were on a lower reading level, but they were at least
Entertaining.
something that I connected with.
Yes.
Something to read, because I didn't have a lot of access to novels and.
Well, for me, similarly, I didn't have access to a lot of books that were appropriate for my age,
Right.
or even books that were appropriate for just above my age. But I did end up having friends, and I'm like, oh man, I got a ton of these books, and it was extremely satisfying to be able to read all those books. Now, after that, I got heavily into the Lord of the Rings. I reread the Lord of the Rings in high school so many times.
Okay, let's go down this rabbit hole for a minute. So you're aware of Max is reading a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Couldn't get through Fellowship.
Okay.
Walt read The Hobbit in a couple of weeks. Couldn't get through Fellowship.
Well, the first 3 times I tried to read the Hobbit, I couldn't. I couldn't get through the first section about the hole. It's not a dry, sandy hole, and it's not wet and sloppy or whatever. But it's the dry description at the very beginning of the Hobbit was almost like a test of your endurance to get through before the story became entertaining and I was able to connect with it.
I never had that struggle with The Hobbit, and I was so hungry. By the time I read The Hobbit, I'd never. I mean, we were reading literally stupid, just basically vocabulary word books.
Yeah.
Right. So when The Hobbit came around, my grandmother gave me a copy of it. I had never experienced anything like this. This took me to another world.
Well, yeah.
And so when I asked her, I was like, "Is there any more?" She's like, "Well, there is, but I don't think you're old enough." I was like, "I don't care. Just let me try it." And so
Sure.
she gives me Lord of the Rings. I read it. I struggle a little bit with the Two Towers. The Battle of Helm's Deep as a fourth grader was very dry,
Yeah.
What's the rap battle quote? We don't need a backstory for every fucking tree branch. Have you seen that?
I have not.
The George R.M. Are we gonna get in trouble for? Can we watch?
Yeah, it'll be copyright.
Is that
It'll
you
be a
can't
thing.
you can't just watch that and
No.
and have.
No, it would be us going, "Oh, that's awesome." It wouldn't be necessarily transformative.
All right. Anyway,
Unless we're gonna EFAP it, every frame of
right.
pause.
But anyway, so I was just so enamored with fantasy that Lord of the Rings didn't bother me.
Sure.
And then I read it again in like 7th grade.
Yeah.
Loved it. And then I read it in college, and I was like, how the fuck did I ever get through this?
Well, as I was reading it, the thing that helped me the most, I also got my Tolkien Illustrated Encyclopedia at the same time.
Those were all the David Day.
Yes.
Yeah.
The same one that you have. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've brought mine over. We've compared.
Well, I think I had to rebuy mine.
Yes.
After looking at yours because I had lost it somewhere. But yeah,
So
very familiar.
Yes, and so what I would do is I would read through, and if I got to a point where I'm like, oh, they're talking some shit I don't understand, I'd go look it up in the encyclopedia. I'm like, oh yeah, to help me place where I was. This was on the first read-throughs. Eventually got to the point where I was just reading the encyclopedia A to Z back and forth.
I did as well.
And
but which was very fascinating because it covered Silmarillion stuff and,
it did.
and a lot of the backstory.
All the way from the creation all the way through the the Third Age.
You didn't join me on my journey of the Silmarillion recently.
I did not.
You've never read it all the way through?
No.
Revisit it. It almost line for line. I remember when I was reading it, I was like, what if this is an analogy of what happened on Earth? You had the gods, right? Mm-hmm. They're in, where do they go from the Grey Havens? It's to the Undying Lands.
The Undying Lands.
Essentially heaven or where the gods
far
live.
West, yes.
But then there was, in between there and Middle Earth, there was Numenor.
Once upon a time.
Once upon a time, which an Atlantean type civilizations that was helped by the gods.
Numenor came to exist after the last alliance of men and elves, where they struck down Sauron. Because, well, no.
No, that was in Middle
then.
Earth. This was way before
It
then.
was before then. I'm sorry. It came to exist because the help of the men, the first age of men assisting them in striking down Melkor, I think.
Right.
And it was raised in the ocean, and only those tribes of men who had assisted were allowed to come over. This was a very early age of men, where men had bred with elves more so than others, so they were a very, very much half elvish at that point. And you're right, because it was the men of Numenor having settled Gondor and Arnor
on Middle Earth as outposts,
as colonies.
As colonies.
And it was the colonies of Arnor and Gondor together who had risen up in the last alliance of men and elves, I think.
Well, by the time I read Silmarillion, I'd already kind of fashioned my prehistory, what I wanted to believe, which was that there was an alien race here that had technologies that taught the humans that be or mated with or did some some shenanigans, if you will. I know Joe Rogan's talked about some theories like this. We read Brandon Sanderson. There's a lot of that stuff, and then Billy Carson comes out.
Yeah.
And you've listened to some Billy Carson.
Yeah.
And the Anunnaki.
I want to say one thing about Billy Carson real quick. just like I talked earlier, prior to the beginning of the podcast, we mentioned Alex Jones. And I said Alex Jones is a character. He has a product. He is selling his product. Now, there are some kernels of truth in what he says, and I do believe he feels genuinely about certain things. But a lot of the hyperbole about Alex Jones is meant to sell his product, InfoWars, and whatever supplements or whatever he's marketing on InfoWars. Billy Carson has his Forbidden Knowledge, which is a product that he sells. He has a number of books he sells. He also is a life coach and a coach for helping you begin
I've done a
businesses
deep
and
dive
stuff.
on Billy Carson.
So he's got lots of products he's also selling.
Oh, 100%.
So I'm I've watched a few of his different interviews, and the way he presents his information is different to certain audiences.
It is. I think we've watched all
Yes.
the same. I've watched everything that exists.
Yes.
On this guy.
Given this, this tells me that there's a lot to him where he's selling a product.
Can you sum up for anybody listening to the podcast what Billy Carson believes or what he is? He's a ancient technology expert.
Billy Carson isn't an expert on ancient technology. Billy Carson promotes himself as an expert on the
Or ancient civilizations, I should say.
Yes, the ancient tablets that still exist from
Samaria.
ancient Samaria,
Yeah.
Mesopotamia, the different writings and carvings that can be found in the various temples and structures in Egypt. He claims to be an expert on these things, and he has a narrative that he has built up over time, which, according to some of these
Kaylin,
tablets,
can you find like a Billy Carson clip on YouTube, possibly an Andrew Schultz?
it can sound rather plausible. However, there's a lot of things which he will describe, and he tries to connect them to current things, like saying that Ra, like the god of Egypt, that Ra's child is a direct translation to the Rothschild family.
Yeah.
That's a very weak connection.
Well, he also
there,
says
Billy.
that Moses is based on an Egyptian, and the reason he had to cross the Red Sea is because he stole the Ark of the Covenant, and the Ark of the Covenant was the battery that powered the pyramids.
the supplementary battery, because the pyramid was a natural generator that had started wearing down, so they had to bring in the Ark of the Covenant as a supplementary battery. Yes, I've heard that as well.
That was that top video with Jesus and Alien. Let's play just a minute of that, because this was actually literally the first video I saw with Billy Carson. And yeah, you can mute the commercial. Andrew Schultz, I don't know if you're familiar with him.
I actually watched
I believe
this
so.
podcast
And
after you brought it up.
Was he
he's a
part
great
alien
comedian.
and trying to do good?
Yes, I believe so.
So he was breaking away. He was using his power, and
Yeah.
he's like, "Yo, what these aliens are doing to us is fucked up.
Right.
We need to break free from that,
Yeah.
and I'm going to liberate the people."
Yeah, so you have to understand, you're right on point. There's good and
Yo,
evil in
Jesus
everything.
is the man, bro.
Yeah,
he's
there's
fine.
good and
Wait,
evil in everything.
We're all part alien
Yeah.
at this point, right?
Absolutely. It's in our DNA.
Ah, fuck. I thought he was a little bit more.
Well,
just to bring up one of the differences here, Billy Carson is saying that Jesus was a human alien hybrid, but he was more alien than most people, that he had more alien DNA in him. This is his what he's talking to Andrew Schultz about. Whereas on the Concrete podcast, when he was discussing with Danny Jones, he suggested
That was a better pod,
that,
actually.
that was a better pod, because there was less comedic jokes taking away from the narrative. It was more he was describing this.
Well, I appreciated Andrew's approach as well, though, for his audience.
Well, for his audience, certainly. But Billy described that Jesus was that the word Jesus didn't exist back then.
right.
The J didn't.
didn't exist.
Yes.
Talk about
And
that
it
for
was-
a second.
And he suggested that the word Jesus is really a packaging of the phrase Iesus, which is Hail Zeus.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Zeus being the king of the gods.
Right.
And that when anyone said Iesus, they were praising Zeus, and this was one of the three big Anunnaki leaders.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure which one. I don't have it off the top of my head, but in the same breath, and just a couple sentences afterwards, he brings up the fact that in Christianity, everyone ends a prayer with "Amen."
Amen. Amon Ra.
And that was based off of Amun-Ra, who
Yeah.
decreed that everyone should praise his name after every deed they.
Well, wasn't he the one that stole the Ark of the Covenant that Moses is based on? I believe it was Amon Ra.
I was lost at that point.
Well, I have
so-
had to watch a couple of his podcasts twice, and I've listened to, I think, 4 or 5 he's got on YouTube, like multi-hour podcasts. I've listened to them all,
Yeah.
some of them multiple times. He never contradicts himself.
No.
So
well, here
he
he's
either-
saying that here in this podcast, he's saying that Jesus was a human that just had a little bit more
Anunnaki DNA.
Anunnaki DNA in him. Whereas in the other podcast, he's saying that Jesus was never a person. There was no Jesus. It was a Iesus. It was referring to another one of the top 3 Anunnakis. That there was no separate individual known as Jesus.
are we saying he does contradict himself then?
Yes, and in these two cases, there's a contradiction. So this is one of the differences. Here, talking to Andrew Schultz, he has this narrative about Jesus, but for Danny Jones, he had a different narrative about Jesus.
I wonder if that's one of those situations where I glazed over because I was working. You know,
Possibly
sometimes
because
you-
in Danny Jones, he says
'Cause I don't
that,
remember that.
Jesus was either a student or a reincarnated body of Thoth, the Egyptian god of knowledge.
Yes, I do remember that, and I also remember he talks about how Jesus in the Bible disappears at age 12 and reappears at age 32.
Yes, because
so
he-
what's he doing for 20 years? Well,
Correct.
allegedly he went to Egypt
Yes.
to learn
And
a lot
when-
of these ancient mysteries, or learn
Yes.
the language of the old Sumerian tablets,
Yes.
or the emerald tablets of Thoth.
Yes. But Danny Jones, Billy Carson goes further. He says he not only went to Egypt and studied in Egypt, but then he traveled to India to learn the mystic arts, and then he traveled to far China to learn the Tibetan healing chi and whatnot. The ancient
So is he a
Qigong.
grifter? He's definitely a grifter because he's making a lot of money on this shit. He's teaching classes, he's taking tours, he's doing all that. So he's grifting on it.
He is selling a product.
But does he believe in the product? Because you were talking about Alex Jones earlier. I believe that Alex Jones believes what he says. I even believe what you called an act earlier. I believe that is the real Alex Jones.
So you believe that Alex Jones will learn about these things and he'll automatically follow it to its most extreme slippery slope example.
I think
and
when
he-
Alex Jones
and
sits
he's-
down to dinner,
and he's 100% bought in.
I think he's bought in, and I think his personality is really that extreme.
Okay. Here's a question. This may be a little bit too extreme. All right. So Alex Jones.
It's called the podcasting couch. Drew.
Okay. So Alex Jones has to pay the gross domestic product of France because of his comments in regards to school shooting.
Sandy Hook in particular,
Sandy Hook.
not in
All right.
general, but to the
But
Sandy Hook.
All right. Because some of the verbiage he used, it made it sound like he was suggesting that the act of shooting at Sandy Hook was a false story, that it was
Right.
a false flag, that it was child actors.
But if you look at the evidence that he had,
yeah,
the students at Sandy Hook at the time were transplanted in. The high school had been abandoned, or the elementary school had been abandoned recently. There's some really weird stuff going on if you look into it.
So there's weird stuff.
Yeah.
My understanding of that was that the whole false narrative or child actor aspect of it was that the standing on the corpses of the dead people in order to affect some kind of societal change, that taking advantage of this crisis and making it a huge media blow up, that was my understanding originally when he was calling it, child actors, is that you're bringing children.
Well, he
out.
was saying he basically said it was a psyop
Yes.
that the government put on in order
Yes.
to help further their gun control narrative.
My understanding of his original narrative was not that the shooting didn't happen or that news of the shooting was a psyop, but that the media coverage of it was a psyop. That bringing children out and having them crying on camera wasn't 100% a performative act, but maybe they were encouraged
Sure.
And
by
that- and
by nefarious
taking,
parties.
by taking advantage
Just
of the
like these
situation.
college protests right now.
Yes.
How many of those people protesting on the side of Queers for Palestine are actually going to that school or are paid by Soros-funded money? We're getting deep into it now, Drew.
We are
We're
getting
not talking about video games anymore,
I've got
son.
a terrible joke. I'm gonna hold it in. So,
Let's get into these college protests right now.
sure.
What is the ultimate goal here? Because we know for a fact that a lot of the people, they all wear masks, you've noticed.
Yes.
And a lot of that obviously is to hide their identity because they're students.
Yes.
But I think the counter narrative that's going on now is that a lot of these people are hiding their identity because they don't go to the college at all. They're paid to be there by Soros-funded money or whatever it is to create conflict, which has now put the Biden administration in a bind because we are allies with Israel. So whether you support Zionism or whatever either side claims it is, it puts the administration in a bind because your leftist base is supporting Palestine, which is intertwined with Hamas. It's very complicated. And like Dave Smith says, anybody who's out there putting their flag in their bio right now, and I agree with this for the record, doesn't have a fucking clue what's going on. I've listened to over 20, probably closer to 40 hours of podcasts, and I'm still not even through the New Jerusalem. I'm only on episode, how many episodes are there? Six? I'm on the third one. So it's been a slow go.
Yeah.
It's 20 hours, but I've also listened to a ton of other material. So I've listened to 40, 50 hours of Israel-Palestine objective, just history. And there is no one who fully understands this in America. In my estimation, I think the right-wing Judeo-Christian people are, God promised Israel this, and we side with Israel, and the Palestinian people are saying Israel's committing a genocide now, and this is exactly what the Nazis did, and both sides are going back and forth, and I will raise my hand and say, you know what? I've spent 40 to 50 hours researching this, and I don't have a fucking clue what's going on, so how can you guys definitively say I'm on X side, and I don't know what the right answer is. I'm not in control of the United States, but
Well, we can say that we've spent 40 hours of time going over that, but that's like you can take a 40-hour class and be certified in, lesbian dance theory or something.
Sure.
Doesn't necessarily make you an expert in it or able to
or
do it.
lesbian or a dancer.
Or dancer, you have. I think,
But my point is that I have probably put in more effort into researching the conflict than the average person with the flag in their bio has.
the average person. This is the flag in the bio.
This is what annoys me about America is its low political IQ and their willingness to Facebook forward or tweet something they know jack shit about.
This edges into discussion on the zero world, which I've talked to you before.
Well, let's talk about the zero world.
Sure,
Explain the
so-
zero world to the audience.
My idea of the zero world. In our world, we look at different societies and different cultures and different countries, and they're described, this country's in the third world. It's a developing country. They don't have utilities. They don't have regular electricity. They're struggling to secure clean water and food for everyone in their country. The poverty is extensive. They don't, et cetera, et cetera. There's the developing world, the third world. Then you have the first world, which are developed nations, which are nations which pride themselves on being civilized. They have plentiful food, access to water, the power is reliable. Our population is educated, indoctrinated, however you want to brag about it.
The biggest complaint we have is that Chick-fil-A is not open on Sunday.
Chick-fil-A and Smokin' Joe's. Smokin'
damn
Joe's
it.
is not open on
Those
Sundays.
motherfuckers.
Well, they need a day to take off, so
Well, apparently.
I don't blame them. I take 2 days off work a week, so they can at least have one day. But the internet, I mean, I'm saying this on a podcast here, the internet is the zero world. It's the next level. It's not the third world. It's not even the developed world. It's the product of the overdeveloped mind. It doesn't exist. Nothing that happens in the zero world is real. Nothing in the zero world exists. Anything that's said in the zero world doesn't happen. It was never spoken unless someone reads it and reads it aloud. Then it's spoken. Things that happen in the zero world have no real world effect unless someone in the real world takes action on that thing. So for us as a society, as a species, to spend so much time and effort on what did or didn't happen in a imaginary space, and the only reason we can all agree that it's the same imaginary space is that we pull it up on our phone and it's the same. But if it was changed between yesterday and today and we pulled it up, we wouldn't notice the difference because our short-term memory is nothing like what it used to be. No one knows their phone numbers anymore. People are lucky to know their address anymore without having to look it up on their phone.
Yeah, I don't know anyone's phone number anymore.
I know my own phone number.
Well, sure. I mean, I know my parents and my wife. That's about it.
Immediate contact.
But I still remember my friends' phone numbers from elementary school.
I still remember my grandfather's phone number.
Yeah.
Because it was the one place that I always knew where someone was at.
100%.
So I could call. The zero world is a fallacy.
But people live in it.
People think they live in it. And that's one of the biggest causes, I think, of the mental health crisis our society is seeing. Because when people take their profile photo, they're not just taking a photo of themselves after they rolled out of bed, after they were up late, after a long week with no days off. They're looking for a good photo. They're looking for even their best photo.
This is the conversation I tried to get kickstarted last week. Now we're in it.
And take a photo from their best angle with the best lighting, or from here and here, and they'll take
the
4 or 5.
reality that you see of a family is no different than a scripted reality show where you've done makeup and camera and you're your best perfect thing, and people start wanting to emulate. I want this perfect world.
Yes.
I want their family. Well, in reality, they're going through a divorce or their kids are getting kicked out of school. They don't know what's going on.
The most harmful thing in social media, the Instagram, the Facebook, or anything like that, is not necessarily looking at what other people have. It's looking at what you put online. Because these young people are told you find the very best stuff, your very best lighting, and then maybe the photo isn't even good enough then. It has to be photoshopped.
And we know about all the filters, on Instagram, and
So then it gets uploaded. This is your new profile. And you're looking at your profile. You get likes, and people who've liked your photo, they comment on your photo. Oh, you're so stunning and strong, and this looks so good. You're looking so good. You're living your best life. But then you look at that photo, and you look at yourself in the mirror, and that's not the same person.
So you think it backfires?
It backfires on everyone.
On the user and,
everyone.
Yeah.
Because you look at your buddy from high school. Your buddy from high school says, oh, yeah, I've got the family. I've got the house. It's great. You don't know that he's upside down 3 times over on debt, and that he's living day to day, and he's struggling not to with depression and trying not to end himself because there's no light at the end of a tunnel.
Well, I would like to say that that's a problem for the younger generation who hold on, that grew up with it, because I didn't grow up with it. It came out when I was in college. You had the MySpace and the Facebook, and I didn't really play on it until very recently. But it's not. It's a project of people much older than I am. People in their 60s are doing the same shit you're talking about.
Everybody.
It's infected it all the way to the top of the chain.
Yeah. And honestly, we try to avoid having those discussions. It was the government that didn't want to make it happen. But you notice that during the lockdowns, use social media. It's the safe way to interact with your family, with your loved ones. Don't go visit grandma in person. You're going to kill her if you do.
Hold on, I'm trying to think. The lockdowns, this was 2020. 2020.
2020 through 2022.
This was the
and 3.
time, and fact check this really happened. The government was telling Twitter and Facebook to censor information
Yes.
that was counter narrative to COVID, Hunter Biden's laptop, and the vaccines.
And the diaries.
Yeah, and that's all. That's all checked off now. If anybody's wondering, that's legit. That really happened. Look at the Twitter files. Matt Taibbi, Schellenberger, Elon. Let them dig through the files. That's all
It's
checked
above
off
board.
now. This
It's all
really
above board,
happened.
yes.
Yeah, it's above board now. It's no longer a conspiracy theory.
Yes.
We are here in the timeline.
We've well, honestly, even the Hunter Biden laptop, prior to the election, the FBI told all the social media companies,
It was
by the
Russian
way,
disinformation.
there's a story coming. We can't tell you what it is just yet, but it's 100% Russian misinformation. Make sure everyone knows it's Russian misinformation. Disinformation, and make sure that it's blocked in any and every way possible. And then a month, 2 months after the election is done, Biden's sitting in the hot seat in the White House, and all of a sudden, oh no, it was legit. It's just no
Tony
one cares.
Bobulinski blew it open the night of the debates, and it was weird timing. It's like you waited till the night of the debates to come out with this, but he's testifying now. He's testified, I believe, in front of Congress.
He has.
Speaking of Congress, I want to ask you this right before the show. So, flashback a while, and they kick Mike McCarthy out.
Yeah, because
As
he only
Speaker.
got in because he had to agree that one vote would be enough to bring up a vote of no confidence.
Caitlin, can you go to x.com and pull up Thomas Massie, Massie? Pull up his X profile, because I want to read his words exactly. This is from yesterday evening, probably around 6 o'clock. So basically what happened is they had written into Mike McCarthy's deal that it only takes one person to be able
Yeah.
to call for a vote of no confidence, basically. Situation
Call
that
for a
they-
vote of no confidence in Chancellor Valoram's leadership.
Valorum, thank you. I was stalling for time to try and think of Valorum. In my old age, I can't recall like I used to.
It happens to all of us.
I drink alcohol to help with it, and it didn't seem to work.
Well, some things help, some things hinder.
Maybe I got that backwards.
Maybe
But-
you need to be taking some of that new stuff from Joe Rogan, that
Alpha Brain.
that Alpha Brain.
Yes.
This is not.
I don't like to push powders, but this is something I developed myself. Alpha Brain, I take it before every show. I love.
I promise. I developed it myself in a shack in the middle of the woods here in the Ozarks. It's 100% above board.
do love some
all
Joe
the
Rogan.
all the stuff that fell below board, I didn't include in the box.
So anyway, they kicked Mike McCarthy out.
Sure.
We have a very embarrassing vote. Yeah. Can you scroll down to yesterday? 14 others. No, keep going. Keep going. Yep. Yeah, that's it. It's right there. Okay. So, just hold that for a second. I want. So we kick Mike McCarthy out, and then we have a very embarrassing revote for a
Yes.
new speaker.
And it takes a while.
And some big names are coming out, like Jim Jordan.
Yeah.
Which I like my Jim Jordan. But then all of a sudden, this guy named Mike McCarthy, or Mike Johnson, gets voted in out of nowhere. Nobody's heard of this guy. The Democrats vote for him. Why the hell are they voting for him? Well, of course, if you're tribal, there's two tribes right now. There's the left and the right.
Yeah.
And so if you're on the right voted for him. He's our guy. We love Mike Johnson no matter what. We've always loved Mike Johnson. Where's Mike Johnson from? I don't know.
Louisiana?
I don't even know.
Louisiana.
I think it is Louisiana, but
It's Louisiana.
But yeah, most people don't know. I wasn't sure, but it didn't matter because he was the new guy. He's the new tribe
and
leader,
he was waving the right flag.
and he's a Christian and anti-abortion, and that gets a lot of the that far right. Anyway, I was
It's
like,
a southern conservative state, but they also have Mardi Gras.
they did, and I've been to Mardi Gras for another pod.
Sure.
I was in high school. It was a vacation with my parents to New Orleans,
Sure.
or as they say, Nolans. Anyway, so Mike Johnson gets in, and a lot of people are just all ready to rah. This is our guy. I'm like, I'm gonna wait and see.
Sure.
So within a month or two, he releases the J6 tapes, 40,000 hours footage or whatever it was. Tucker airs him, gets fired, and then he went on to be TCN. And I was like, that's awesome. Thank you for doing that.
Well, Tucker released them prior to Mike Johnson. He released them under, he released them under Kevin McCartney because that was one of the rules.
Was it?
That Kevin McCartney had to agree. McCarthy had to agree to the rule that a single vote would be enough to initiate a vote of no confidence, and that he had to agree to release the January 6 tapes. And he did release them to Tucker Carlson and a few others.
McCarthy,
because it was required. Now it wasn't. It was after that the vote was actually called. Because
then I'm getting my timeline wrong, and I apologize.
No worries.
I'm attributing that to Mike Johnson. I thought that was Mike Johnson.
McCarthy.
Okay, then I'm wrong. But fast forward, Mike Johnson has pushed through a lot of asinine shit. Like the AAA bill, the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, that now everything's anti-Semitism. Just like the right complains about the woke left, is everything is racism. Now, which direction are we going in? How about we just have free speech, period, and the worst ideas lose, right? So if you're a racist, you're going to get shot down by people in society saying, hey, these are not good ideas. And if you're an anti-Semite, you're going to get shot down for anti-Semitic ideas, right? Why not let the people figure that out? Why does the government need to step in? Well, we already have a First Amendment. It's about free speech.
You recall the Skokie Nazi convention that went on, or the Nazi parade?
This doesn't sound familiar. Enlighten me.
It's old. This
How
happened
old?
a long time ago. Was it
I'm old,
the
Drew.
80s or 90s it happened?
Oh, then shit, no, I don't.
All right. So actual American
I was playing
neo-Nazis,
Pac-Man in the 80s, dude.
Actual American neo-Nazis got together, and they wanted to hold a parade in Skokie, was it Wisconsin? And so they got shut down. But it was one of the pro-rate civil liberty organizations that nowadays says everything is racist. They stood up at the time.
ADL?
The ADL.
Yeah, Anti-Defamation League.
I think so.
Yeah.
They stood up and said no. Yeah. They actually paid for this to go to court, and the court ruled in favor that based off of free speech, the First Amendment, free speech, they had the right to demonstrate and hold their parade. And so this extremely lefty organization nowadays was protecting the right of Nazis to protest, to do their parade at that time, because the idea was it was important for terrible people to be able to speak their mind and reveal to everyone that they're terrible people.
That is the correct answer. That's the American answer.
And that is the American answer, because then at that point you have the right to say, you're a terrible person. I don't want to do business with you. You're a terrible person. I don't want to buy your product.
Well, it's like a parent raising a child in a bubble. You're protecting them from everything, even angry speech, like these video game platforms, the online. You can't say hateful things in the chat because it might hurt somebody's feelings.
Yes.
Well, bro, what's real life like? You can't put well, they're trying to put censors in corporate. You can't say certain things, and but in real life, when bros get together, you're not going to censor the human heart or the human brain. You can censor behavior.
You mean we can't Gillette each other and go, hey, bro, calm it down?
Dude, that commercial pissed me off more than any other commercial I've ever seen, I think. We need to watch that too. But let's go back to Thomas Massey's quote. So anyway, so they get rid of McCarthy. They get Mike Johnson in. And then because of the AAA thing and also the $100 billion more to Ukraine and another however many million to Israel.
Yeah.
The Marjorie Taylor Greene, which she's another Alex Jones type. She's so whacking off the hinge that people tend to think she's an idiot, but she has a lot of good things to say.
She does.
But she is very ridiculous in her approach. So Massey says yesterday, vacating Kevin McCarthy was a huge mistake. Every Democrat voted to vacate him, which they did. because he fought them tooth and nail. Keeping Mike Johnson is an even bigger mistake. An overwhelming majority of Democrats voted to keep him because he's given them everything they want. And that's exactly what he's done.
When they brought him in, I remember all the talking heads were saying that even though he's a nobody, they brought him in because he's well known for bringing opposing groups together for compromises. In order
Is that
to
what
make
he's doing?
things happen.
Because
Apparently.
what is the Ferengis' definition of a compromise?
I'm not. You have to remind me on this.
Well, I was hoping you have the better memory, but it's something to the effect of neither side is happy, but they both walk away feeling they got something.
I don't think that's a Ferengi. I don't think that's a rule of acquisition.
It's not a rule of acquisition. It's a Ferengi telling another, "You're never happy with the deal." Like the right negotiate. Maybe that's a Trump quote for all. I don't know where I'm getting it. Maybe I'm making that shit up.
It's different. I think it's from a different.
It's definitely
Star
not a
Trek.
rule of acquisition.
It's not a rule of acquisition because rules of acquisition are always kind of tongue in cheek. Like war is good for business,
Right.
but also and then the next one is
Yeah.
peace is good for business.
Yeah.
Is that it's
Did
everything's good for business.
Paramount ever publish an official? I know Wikipedia's got it, but
No, I don't think so. I mean,
What were we
somebody
gonna-
somewhere has.
what were we gonna watch? We're gonna pull up something.
We were going to watch the Gillette commercial.
Oh yeah, can you pull up woke Gillette commercial?
The best a man can get.
This was the most unrealistic, and a lot of the woke commercials that I see, I'm like, all right, whatever. But this
Yeah.
one in particular,
Yeah.
I was like, no, that's just not. It's kind of like your Scooby Doo moment.
I figured that The Last Jedi was the worst woke commercial that's ever been made. I mean, it was 3 hours long, and
But Ryan Johnson got roasted for 4 years straight. That was worth it to me.
no.
I killed the
Unfortunately,
past, Drew. Yep, that top one. That was it. What was it? Kill the past?
Yeah,
What was the
something
quote?
like that.
The Kylo Ren quote. Let the past die. Kill it if you have to.
Yeah.
Is this the best a man can get? Is it? You can't hide from it.
See, that's Zero World right there.
Going on far too long.
Guys being attracted to women is not cool.
What I actually think she's trying to say.
Making the same old excuses. But something finally changed.
Anna Kasparian.
And there will be no going back. Because we believe in the best in men.
Men need to hold other men accountable.
Could you pause that real quick?
To say the right.
That was that example, of course, was Terry Crew talking about how he was sexually harassed and assaulted by Harvey Weinstein figures in Hollywood. That's not a men being bad. That's a Hollywood is terrible.
No, that's taken out of context.
Okay.
Rewind it go back to 45 seconds. Yeah, right
Thank
there,
you.
right there. This is good.
Hold other men accountable.
Smile, sweetie.
To say the right thing.
Come on, man.
I got a comment on it. This is it right here. Oh yeah, dude, not cool. You can't look at an attractive woman.
In ways big. And small.
That's cute.
But some is not.
Telling a little girl she's strong. I have no problem with that. That's bullshit.
Because the boys watching today.
All right, pause it. I next time Walt and Theo, after being best friends for 3 days, just start beating the shit out of each other in the backyard because they've been together too much or somebody's something. I'm gonna put my arms between them and separate them and say that's not how we treat each other, and see how that works. Because as soon as I walk back in the house, they're gonna resume beating the shit out of each other.
with rocks.
But they're gonna start escalating.
It's gonna escalate.
They're like, we'll be cool in front of mom and dad, but when they're out of the room,
Suddenly, they're
We
gonna go out and
resume.
explore in the woods.
when they're out of the room, we resume. That's the rhyme. One comment I wanted to make in this: there's this stereotype that men are always telling women to smile. You look prettier when you smile.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard this in my real life. And has anybody ever told you this, Caitlin? She's a real. Have you ever had a man tell you to smile more, or you'd look prettier if you smile?
Yeah, but that was also my lovely abusive ex.
So he was an asshole.
Yeah.
Okay, so he doesn't count.
All right. Have you ever had anyone outside of an abusive relationship or an actual photo shoot tell you, "Hey, you should smile more"?
All right, but that is a stereotype.
It is a
About
stereotype,
men.
Yeah.
I never hated anything more when I was, and this happened for years. You know me. You're kind of in my inner circle, so you don't really see it a lot. But I can be a dick.
Sure.
Like, I don't like people. I'm an introvert.
Sure.
So when I'm in a big building of 5,000 people, I don't walk around like this, you know?
No.
It's very, I'm to my destination, don't talk to me, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of had a shield posture
Sure.
when I was walking around.
Somewhat defensive.
Somewhat defensive. Like, I wanted to give off a vibe that I am not open to.
You were not advertising approachability.
Boom. Great way to say that. Do you know how many times women just would rant, people I'd never even seen in my life, say, you need to smile.
People
You
told
need to
me
look
that.
happy.
People have told me that a lot.
I think
When
we
I
need
was
to
younger.
flip that stereotype because I've heard it 1,000 times from random women I don't even know, yet I've never encountered it the other way.
When I was young, I was very, very introverted. I just wouldn't smile a lot. I wasn't very expressive.
Sure.
And of course, you know.
But I would also argue that expressionism is fake
It is.
because most people exuding a smile are not smiling inside.
I didn't. Robin Williams, people.
Bag of worms. Open.
Can of worms, yes.
Go.
Um,
It's not bag of worms. It is definitely.
this is a can.
I grew up in the country.
This
We
is
had
not-
bags.
This is non-biodegradable here.
We
Brad.
couldn't afford cans.
Fair enough. No. No. I learned to smile and to be more expressive through my prior job before working where I am.
But
now.
you learned it.
I had to learn it. It was a mask.
But it was never genuine. That's what you're saying.
Well, no.
You learned it, so you learned to put on the mask,
Yes.
which is exactly what that is.
it's like you only adopted the smile.
Yeah. And if we clip one thing out of this fucking episode, I want it to be the people who walk around smiling all the time are wearing a mask, or they found something that I want, which is probably drugs.
Or they're suckling at the teat of Big Pharma, and they are just drugged where they
Big
don't
Pharma is
live.
turning the frogs gay, and it's coming after your kids.
and they're gonna make them incredibly happy.
Infowars.com.
You don't want your kids to be happy because they're gonna be obscenely happy, and they'll be happy for no reason. Like they'll be out walking in the rain, they'll be completely soaking wet. They'll come inside, they'll be smiling. You'll go, "What the hell's wrong with you?" And
Get
they'll
your
go,
Infowars suspenders right here. That's
Yeah.
what you need, Drew, is Infowars, official Infowars suspenders
Yeah.
and a matching jockey strap.
Well,
Not that anyone would be able to see it and be on
that-
the inside.
Well, that's where the tears are, Brad, on the inside.
They always are. Let's see how much time we got. We got 5 more minutes, so let's. Any closing?
Oh,
Remarks.
we're already there.
We
okay.
couldn't. Yeah, we didn't even scratch the rabbit hole tonight. We barely got it even up to it.
Oh my. Okay. Well, I think in conclusion, you were talking about the flags, people with the flags in the bios, and how they don't really. This is. I mentioned this was edging into the zero world, and I went on this rant about the zero world.
You did.
The stuff that happens on Facebook, the stuff that happens on Instagram. It's not real. It's people have this idea that this online personality, this online avatar, is their real avatar. And nowadays more and more people are attributing their own self-value on the basis of how many likes, how many views, how many upvotes they've received. It's the dopamine hook. It's
Yeah.
the dopamine drip.
I've just started to value myself that way since I started a podcast. So.
Well, okay. Well, I'll be sure to give it a like. Okay. I'm doing my part.
Please do.
So, but everyone who goes online, everyone who's at these protests, when they wear this mask, it's not just a means to keep themselves concealed and keep themselves anonymous. It is a signal. It is a way to display their ideological leaning. Because most people who are conservatives or patriotic aren't necessarily walking around with a mask unless they're sick and they're trying to not kill everyone else with their illness. Because the idea...
Or sick or Asian. Asians have always worn masks.
And that's because of SARS. That's a recent cultural adaptation.
Right, but when I was in Houston
Yeah.
and I saw one person wear a mask, I rolled my eyes. And if I saw an Asian wear a mask, I was like, yeah, they do that.
Okay. I
Just
don't have anything to
just
say
facts,
about that.
people.
But I'm saying
Distance yourself from the podcast. Disavow it.
I'm saying that at this point, at these protests, when these protesters, I say protesters, protesters / rioters, when they're wearing masks, is not just to demonstrate or to preserve the identity, but it's meant as a as a way to pass a purity test, because they're not just showing up.
Good way to
They're
put it.
also covering their face. And it's uncomfortable. People can't hear you. You have to yell louder.
You
that
can't
people
breathe.
Can hear you. You can't breathe. It's hot. It's uncomfortable. And so it's a way for them to demonstrate their further adherence to this group movement. It's a way to increase the zealotry of that. Far
My
more.
acquiescence to the tribe.
Exactly.
I won't question it.
That's right.
I
I've
won't
cut off-
question we have to wear a mask, but we're still going to touch the same keypad with the credit card that the person before me used, and then
Yes. Yes.
put my fingers in
And-
my mouth in 10 minutes.
So the people who show up in person and they're wearing their mask, for them, they're demonstrating and they're going above and beyond. They are going to suffer the mask in honor of the people suffering in other places. This is what bonds them together and makes their sacrifice worthwhile. People online, a like is nothing. A follow is nothing. Posting a digital flag is nothing.
Right.
It doesn't change anything. It's changing ones and zeros.
It requires
online.
little effort for one to give,
It's
but they
zero
still
effort.
won't do it.
It's zero effort. And
So
they-
so even the amount of likes and whatnot you have to give is not really much effort for the other person, is what you're saying.
any action that is worth doing is going to be difficult.
Well, it's
Any action that has no level of difficulty to it is a worthless action.
but if you do a thing and expect nothing in return, let's say you have no visibility to your views and likes, and you do it anyway, right? Like doing something you love,
Sure.
like writing music, writing books, writing novels,
Okay.
right? You do a thing that's passionate. I think there are legitimate people on social media who do a thing and don't care about that.
Don't
I
care
think-
about who sees it.
Right. I think that exists as well.
Oh yes, I'm sure. But
There's
I'm
a lot of
talking
genuine
about-
people. I know what you're talking about. And I think that's despicable.
Well-
but I think there's a lot of genuine good people on the internet too. So you can't I don't want to demonize the internet too much because it's a tool, right? It's like a hammer.
Well, when I say that nothing that happens online is real, I mean that. But books are not written on social media. You're not writing Shakespeare in Twitter. That doesn't happen in the zero world. That happens when a real person, creates a story. When you make music, it happens in this room. It doesn't happen in a chat room. It doesn't happen online. It happens here. Now you can record it, You can record the audio. You can share that with people online. But that act of creation did not happen online.
Well, not necessarily. Now, let's distinguish between art and passion.
Sure.
Okay, art's different than passion. Art's usually done in private. But let's just say you have a podcast, and all you like talking about is Squaresoft games from the 90s.
Okay.
And that's all you do. And you have 2 subscribers and 1 view on every video for 6 years.
Sure.
And you're still putting them out.
It's fine. That's
Right.
worthwhile.
There's people that are, I'm just saying there's another side
Of course.
to the degenerate loser that needs to say, hey, I made a new recipe tonight. Look at what I made. Nobody really gives a fuck. So any like you get is just somebody saying,
Well, again-
here's your validation for the day.
Well, it depends. Is this a person who really enjoys cooking? Is that their hobby? Do they fulfill themselves on finding new ways to make different dishes? Is that their thing? Are they honestly trying to bring that?
Now you're playing devil's advocate.
Is that was here's the thing. And like I said before, anything that's worth doing is going to be difficult. Otherwise, it doesn't have any value. By merely upvoting something, by merely posting a flag in a biopic, that's nothing. And if you expect,
Unless it's a Confederate flag.
if you expect to receive kudos and likes and the recognition of your peers because you are clicking 3 times on something and this is your big contribution to the movement, that's not worthwhile. That is a empty gesture and you're expecting a response from that. The person who has 2 viewers but they're putting out videos or podcasts every week for years, that is a person who's giving up their time to create a video and create a message. That's not 3 empty clicks and I deserve this. This is someone building something and devoting themselves to a thing. That's completely different.
100%. Next topic, because we'll do this again soon.
Sure.
Authenticity and its value in today's society. I believe the stock has gone up.
And authenticity?
And this is a problem I had with society from being a very young age. The people on the news are fake. The people in TV shows are fake. All the people are fake. And the real people are considered outsiders. And we grew up in a fake society. And I think a lot of kids are having problems with that now. And learning how to cope with that. But that's for next time.
Sure.
All right. Caitlin, thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Of course.
You're the best.